The AEM 21-9033DS air intake system is engineered to add horsepower and reduce restriction compared to OEM air intakes, and it comes with a lifetime limited warranty. AEM intakes utilize a reusable dry flow air filter. These oil-free filters are durable and very easy to clean. AEM 21-9033DS air intake fits 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2010 Chevy Silverado and GMC Sierra 2500 and 3500 HD models with a 6.6-liter diesel engine. The 21-9033DS air intake has received a CARB-EO number for these models, which means it is 50 states street legal when used with these models. Check AEMintakes.com for up-to-date information on emissions legality for specific parts on specific vehicles. AEM power testing showed an estimated power gain of 15 horsepower at 2,330 RPM with this air intake installed on a 2007 Chevy Silverado 2500 HD with a 6.6-liter diesel engine. Actual results will vary depending on the condition of the vehicle, mileage, weather, and other variables. Here's a comparison of the car's sound on the dyno with the stock OEM system versus AEM's air intake. AEM air intakes come with detailed instructions with pictures and diagrams. AEM intakes are engineered for specific vehicles to produce a safe horsepower increase. The tools needed for this install are shown. Preparing the vehicle. Make sure the vehicle is parked on a level surface. Set the parking brake. If the engine has run in the past 2 hours, let it cool down. Disconnect the negative battery terminal. Do not discard stock components after removal of the factory system. Removal of the stock system. Depress the locking tab on the mass air sensor. Then disconnect the mass air sensor. Loosen the 2 hose clamps retaining the stock intake tube. Then remove the stock intake tube from the air box and the engine intake port. Pull up firmly on the stock air box, starting on the side closest to the engine to dislodge it from the mounting grommets. Remove the air box from the engine bay. Using a 10mm socket, remove the 4 bolts retaining the stock air box mounting plate. Remove the mounting plate. Using a T20 Torx bit, remove the 2 screws retaining the mass air sensor to the upper air box lid, and remove the mass air sensor. Ensure the O-ring seal is still intact. Installation of the AEM intake system. When installing the intake system, do not completely tighten the hose clamps or mounting hardware until instructed to do so. Install the mass air sensor adapter plate and O-ring seal in the lower intake tube using the 4 4mm Allen bolts. Install the mass air sensor on the mass air sensor adapter plate using the 2 button head Allen bolts. Install the 4.25 by 2.5 inch silicone hose onto the outlet of the intake tube on the A side of the AEM logo. Install the 4.5 by 3 inch silicone hose onto the inlet side of the intake tube on the M side of the AEM logo. Secure both silicone hoses with the hose clamps. Install a hose clamp over the outlet hose and install the intake tube assembly onto the engine intake port. Do not fully tighten the hose clamp. Install the bulb seal around the inside of the outlet hole on the airbox. Trim the excess as needed. Install the grommet into the larger left front mounting hole. Place the airbox into the engine bay into the stock location. Ensure the new left front mounting grommet is lined up with the threaded hole in the engine bay. While pulling the airbox toward the stock coolant reservoir to align the airbox, install 2 M6 by 25mm bolts with 2 flat washers at the 2 mounting holes. Ensure the airbox inlet window is aligned with the stock air inlet window in the sheet metal fender liner. tighten the two bolts. Install a M6 by 25 mm bolt with a flat washer in the remaining mounting hole near the inlet window and tighten the bolt. Drill a 1/4 inch diameter hole in the plastic cap of your AEM air filter at the dimpled location. Clean out all plastic shavings from the inside of the air filter. Install the grommet into the drilled hole. Then install the 5/32 inch plastic elbow adapter into the grommet. Install the 5/32 inch rubber hose into the elbow adapter. This hose will attach to the AEM air filter minder gauge in a later step. Install the large hose clamp provided onto the AEM dry flow air filter. Then install the air filter base adapter into the outlet of the AEM air filter. Place the AEM air filter assembly into the air box. Loosely install the lower intake tube through the bulb seal and into the air filter assembly. Reconnect the mass air sensor, fully seating the connector to lock it. Fully seat the AEM air filter onto the lower intake tube inlet and align it vertically. Tighten the hose clamp at the air filter base. Install a hose clamp on the silicone hose already mounted on the intake tube elbow. Install the lower intake tube into the silicone hose. Do not fully tighten the hose clamp. Install the rubber isolator stud mount into the 6 mm insert on the side of the air box. Then tighten it by hand. Loosely install the L bracket, one flat washer, and the 6 mm serrated nut onto the isolator stud mount. Install one flat washer, the split washer, and the M6 by 12 mm hex bolt through the L bracket slot and into the mounting boss in the lower intake tube. Tighten the bolt and hex nut with a 10 mm socket. Rotate the lower intake tube and air filter assembly until the edge of the air filter cap lines up with the top edge of the air box opening near the fender. Tighten the hose clamp at the silicone hose, connecting the upper and lower intake tubes. Fully seat the silicone hose at the engine intake port and tighten the hose clamp. Install the grommet into the 3/4 inch hole in the corner of the airbox lid. Install the air filter minder gauge into the large grommet. Use glass cleaner to lubricate the hole in the grommet if needed. Mount the loose end of the 5/32 inch hose, already attached to the air filter cap, onto the small port on the air filter minder gauge under the airbox lid. Install the airbox lid onto the airbox using the provided 6 mm hex bolts. Tighten all bolts by hand first, then tighten them with a 10 mm socket to seal the airbox. Ensure the AEM air filter minder gauge needle is pointing to the green sector of the new AEM air filter. Once the air filter is very dirty and the pressure drop across it reaches 20 inches of water, the gauge needle will point to the red sector. This will mean it is time to wash the reusable AEM filter. Reassembling the vehicle. Position the inlet pipes for the best fitment. Be sure that the pipes or any other components do not contact any part of the vehicle. Tighten any rubber mounts, bolts, and hose clamps. Check for proper hood clearance. Readjust the pipes if necessary and retighten them. Inspect the engine bay for any loose tools and check that all fasteners that were moved or removed are properly tightened. Reconnect the negative battery terminal and start the engine. Let the vehicle idle for 3 minutes. Perform a final inspection before driving the vehicle. It will be necessary to check AEM air intakes periodically for realignment, clearance, and tightening of all connections. Failure to follow the above instructions or proper maintenance may void warranty. Go to aemintakes.com to find products, download installation instructions, view dyno charts showing estimated horsepower gains, and for other product details.